that you know now that maybe you didn't know before you got, before the start of camp or whatnot?
It's a good question. I wouldn't say, anything necessarily that's been different than what I thought, than what I had heard talking to Barry Trotz. John Gruden's a friend of mine. He's an assistant coach there, and talked with those guys a little bit. Andy Green's a good friend of mine. He played with him. So I had a pretty good read, I think, on Nick, and ultimately that's borne out to be true, in my opinion. He's all business. He's a really good pro. He's a really, really good skater, as you saw last night, and he can defend with his feet great, and we're hoping he can help our power play. He'll get the opportunity to, so the opportunity meeting right now in camp, and then once we whittle it down next week to 10 guys on that unit, hopefully he's grabbed a spot.
Can probably help you in so many ways. Plus the fact he's played in so many big games here the last few years.
Well, I like that, and he comes from a team and an organization that does it right, and so the habits are good. For certain. So, all that part's I think are real positive.
Jeff, I wanted to follow up. We talked about the power play last night, and the challenges, when you don't have your entire NHL squad in one game. What are the challenges in kind of evaluating it, both either unit?
Well, I think you're more evaluating the individuals than you're evaluating the unit, because the unit isn't necessarily what we're even necessarily looking towards. What we're trying to do is put individuals in spots that we think that they can be successful. That's one of the biggest or most important things on the power play, and so we're putting them in those spots where we think they can be successful, and then they got to go out and execute. The challenge is, they may have only practiced it that morning in a pregame skate, and they got to go out, so you don't have a lot of chemistry. But right now we got a whole bunch of guys trying out for spots in the power play, and if a guy's not excelling a certain spot on the power play, he might try him somewhere else as the camp moves along, and guys have to grab those spots, and they have to find a way to show us that they're going to make our power play better. And there's a lot that goes into that, but that's what we're doing right now.
How helpful is it to have, by my count, you have around 13, 14, 15 guys easily who could compete for spots, to have that much competition?
Well, it's good, Helene, but ultimately, we don't want 13 solid power play guys. We'd like 5 great ones, and so we need to find out which guys are going to show us they can be great. It's one thing to be a guy who can be on the power play. We need people who are going to make our power play way better, and so guys got to find ways to excel in those areas and excel when they're getting those opportunities. So certainly, there's more guys then we have spots for that can be on the power play, but who's going to grab it and who's going to be great? That's what we're looking for.
Is Hronigan, Sider, and Leddy, I guess, based on last night, front runners to run the power plays?
Yeah, certainly those are 3 guys that are trying to make their case that they should be running it. At some point we'll try Phil Hronik on the flank as well, where he shoots a one-timer. So we could have a unit with 2 deep potentially, and we're going to do that as we move through camp as well. But giving them the opportunity, those 3 players, to kind of be up top and see how they do with it. Jordan Oatley's run a power play before too, so he'll get some opportunity as well up there.
Lastly, Tyler Bertuzzi and Dylan Larkin, are they going to play this weekend? Are they cleared? Can you kind of clarify where they're at?
Well, Tyler's been cleared, and then Larkin is cleared. My plan is to play I've got to get an injury report from today before I say what our lineup's going to be tomorrow and in the next day, but we'd like to get those guys in a game here soon.
Okay, but both are cleared to play.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Max Boltman. Handedness on the power play. You guys haven't had maybe enough right-handers. I feel like I assume Sider and Hronik, Hronik's on the flank, makes sense. Just righty.
Well, what you'd like for certain, if I don't want to interrupt you, but if you have the righty on the flank and the righty up top, someone that's running it on the other side with a righty in the middle, and then a lefty, and now you've got righty options, or down, and then he's got all righty options. So that's what you'd love, and vice versa if you run it off the other unit. You don't always have that. Certainly, we haven't had all the the right shots needed for that. As I've said, that's one of the positives with a guy like Bobby Ryan, who's trying to make the hockey team, is he's a right shot that can help us on the power play potentially. So, but it's good to have those. Ultimately, it doesn't mean you can't be successful other ways. Power plays have been successful with 5 lefties, and you got to find a way to be successful. But it certainly helps to have more options with the rights and lefts.
And then with Sider and Letty, I imagine there's at least the opportunity for mentorship there for them as a pairing. Do you talk to Nick about kind of like how you want to mentor Sider, or just kind of let nature take its course?
Probably a little of both. No, I met with Nick before the season and told him he was going to be paired with Sider in camp, and that that's kind of how day one of camp starts. You never want to get too far ahead of yourself, but my biggest message to Nick is just be who you are, be a great pro. And I think talking is fine, but what really helps is when you have great models, great examples that young guys follow. Now, I will tell you also that I think Sides has a lot of qualities of being a great pro in terms of his preparedness, his approach. He wants to be a great player. So, I don't think he needs a ton of mentorships, but it's certainly good to have a little balance of that. And I would even say the same. I mean, Phil Hronik's still a young player. And so now Danny DeKaiser's been around the league a little bit, and those two guys paired up right now together. And Stalzy's another one that can help guys. So whoever he ends up paired up with. So I think having those mentorships is good.
What do you like about, obviously the practice is divided, so you kind of see it clear. What do you like about doing that?
Well, I just think, you'd like to get to your group as early as possible when we're not able to as much maybe as we'd like, just with the number of exhibition games, because they've been pushed back a little bit too. And so you got to kind of run 2 teams through that. But so today was just a one day where we can get to, kind of an established group of guys that have been Red Wings or it looks like will be, and then a group of guys that are fighting for those spots. Now, as I told that first group, this competition is far from over. It's not over at all. This is one day. We'll get back to split groups as we move through the rest of the week until next Friday. By next Friday, we'd like to know who our team is. So, they've got 3, 4, 5, 6 games or whatever, 5 games in order to make their statement before that Friday. And we'd like to bring our team as full as possible to Buffalo next Saturday. So, but what do I like about it? It gets probably going at an NHL pace and an NHL attention to detail and all those things. It gets all those guys into that. Yep.
Answer, Con?
Yeah, Jeff, at least for now, just the way the defense is set up, you like just the balance, the kind of symmetry. You got a righty and a lefty, you got a veteran and a young guy. Just how much do you like just the way it's set up right now?
Yeah, well, I think in a perfect world, you'd love to have those things that you talked about. You'd love to have a lefty and a righty. You'd love to have a veteran and maybe a younger guy, especially if you have younger guys. You'd love to have, a little bit of an offensive guy, maybe with a little bit of a defensive guy. That's all in a perfect world. Certainly the right and left helps a lot. It helps in a lot of ways. Now, you can't always have that, and that's the reality of it. But when you can, it's great. So, right now we're in a spot, we've got a good balance, the best balance. We've worked over the years. Obviously, it wasn't that long ago where Mike Green, I think, was our only right shot D, and then now we've worked and all of a sudden now we've got a number of right shot and left shots D. I think our management group's done a really good job of that. And so it gives me as the coach more flexibility and to be able to put those types of pairs out there.
And you see, when you got like 8 NHL defensemen, I think Mark was there a little while ago and talked about having that much depth kind of keeps even the guys that are in the lineup kind of on edge, kind of pushes them to want to maintain that spot. Just how much does that competition help?
I think that competition is critical. I think, beyond the fact that we will have injuries at some points, you need that depth. Beyond that fact, I got a chance to tell every single defenseman that, in my opinion, we have 8 NHL defensemen. And that means that every night we're going to be sitting out 2 guys that, in my opinion, are legit NHL defensemen. That's the reality of it. And so if you don't want to become one of those guys, you got to play great. You can't just play good. And ultimately, different guys will sit at different times. And so, when you have a great goalie tandem, a really good goalie sits on the bench sometimes. That's the reality of that competition. It's no different than with the D-corps. So, as I've said, I think this D-corps certainly is as deep as we've had since I've been here. And I think that's a real positive for us moving into the season. Yep.
Next question, Bob. Go.
And Jeff, I just wondered if there was any more news on Berggren about when he might be able to see action?
Well, he moved into full practice today. Was in a non-contact jersey, but was in full practice. And I think he's moving towards being able to take contact here. So I talked to him at the end of practice. He said he felt really good. So we're hoping that he can move into full practice in a regular jersey, and then potentially try to get him into a game or two here. Obviously it's unfortunate that it started not being able to be partake in camp, but hopefully we can get him into something. Kind of
an obvious follow-up, but certainly with a guy like him who doesn't have an NHL resume to fall back on, he really needs this preseason to audition if he's going to earn a spot on the team. 100%. It's a guy in his position's got to, like, as we talked about earlier, they got to play great. They got to be way better than other guys to grab spots. It's hard to do if you're not healthy, and that's nobody's fault. That's just reality, So, but that's okay. We'll get a chance to see him hopefully. If we can get a chance to see him in preseason, great. And if not, then he goes down to GR, and ultimately the guys that go down there and play great end up with opportunities up here. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
That's it for us today. Thanks.